Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, reading today from Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 20, Text 38. Adrishtaya namaskritya nripasandarshitatmani avyaktaya cha devanam devaya swapuram yayau adrishtaya namaskritya nripasandarshitatmani avyaktaya cha devanam devaya swapuram yayau adrishtaya namaskritya nripasandarshitatmani avyaktaya cha devanam devaya swapuram yayau. Adrishtaya namaskritya nripasandarshitatmane avyaktaya cha devanam devaya swapuram yayau. Adrishtaya namaskritya nripasandarshitatmane avyaktaya cha devanam devaya swapuram yayau. Adrishtaya namaskritya nripasandarshitatmane avyaktaya cha devanam devaya swapuram yayau. Adrishtaya namaskritya nripasandarshitatmane avyaktaya cha devanam devaya swapuram yayau. Mataji's. Adrishtaya, unto who is beyond the purview of material vision. Namakritya, offering obeisances. Nripaha, the king. Sandarshita, revealed. Atmane, unto the Supreme Soul. Avyaktaya, who was beyond the manifestation of the material world. Cha, also. Devanam, of the demigods. Devaya, unto the Supreme Lord. Swapuram, to his own house. Yayau, returned. Translation. King Pṛthu then offered his respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the Supreme Lord of all demigods. Although not an object of material vision, the Lord revealed himself to the sight of Mahārāja Pṛthu. After offering obeisances to the Lord, the king returned to his home. Purport. The Supreme Lord is not visible to material eyes, but when the material senses are inclined to the transcendental loving service of the Lord and are thus purified, the Lord reveals himself to the vision of the devotee. Avyakta means unmanifested. Although the material world is a creation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is unmanifested to material eyes. Mahārāja Pṛthu, however, developed spiritual eyes by his pure devotional service. Here, therefore, the Lord is described as Sandarshitatma, for he reveals himself to the vision of the devotee, although he is not visible to ordinary eyes. Thus end the Bhakti Vedanta purports of the 4th canto, 20th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Lord Vishnu's Appearance in the Sacrificial Arena of Mahārāja Pṛthu. And again the translation. King Pṛthu then offered his respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the Supreme Lord of all demigods. Although not an object of material vision, the Lord revealed himself to the sight of Mahārāja Pṛthu. After offering obeisances to the Lord, the king returned to his home. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Soyam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapata Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratashe Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we are concluding this chapter, Lord Vishnu's appearance in the sacrificial arena, and I mean all parts of Bhagavatam are nectarian, but I really think the past few texts and purports have really been far out, I find, of this section of Srimad Bhagavatam. So there's so much to discuss, and yet something that I think of whenever we discuss this topic. Of course, avyakta does not mean qualityless. We know this. This is bhakti vriksha level understanding, and yet bhakti vriksha level understandings are very deep. Right? I remember hearing once, there was one sadhu who was very well known for being very realized, very advanced in his understanding, and so sometimes people would be confused because they would go to hear from him. They'd expect senior sadhu, right, relishing the holy name. If you would ever hear him chant, he would chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, like this. He wouldn't be like, how do we chant, 16 rounds, 16 rounds, 16 rounds, right? That's our chanting, right? But he was relishing the holy name as he spoke it, as he chanted it, right? So when they would go, they would expect, we will hear Ras Leela Katha, we will hear glories of the gopis, right? They're expecting all of these things. And when they would go, he would speak about the different elements, the false ego, right? The creation of this material universe, and everyone would be confused. And so not confused, their sahajiya expectations were rather being refuted. And so one devotee rather, came to the disciple of the sadhu and said, does your Guru Maharaj ever discuss the higher topics? Right? Does he ever discuss the higher things? I want to hear them. And this disciple, he said, Guru Maharaj discusses the lower topics in the highest of ways. I thought this was a very nice insight, right? These basic conceptions, they're very deep, they're very profound, right? I remember whenever I'd stay in India with my grandmother, every morning she would read Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is. And she read it so many times, Ed saw her copy, right? She read it so many times it fell apart 3 times. And each time she would take a piece of cloth and she would sew it back together and she would keep reading. Right? So every day she would read Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita for many, many years, right? I mean, she was practicing Krishna. She was initiated when, like, 70 years ago or something. So it's a long, long time to be practicing Krishna consciousness. And I remember when I would stay with her, we would discuss, all things about Krishna, right? She would tell me all sorts of things. And one day I remember, because I would think, she's reading so much about the Bhagavad Gita. I'm curious what she gets out of it. So I would ask her, not just one day. Every few days I would say, what did you read today in the Bhagavad Gita? And she would tell me. She would say, nothing is greater than Krishna. That is what I read today in Bhagavad Gita. And then the next day I would say, what did you read in Bhagavad Gita? And she would say, everything is here and Krishna is here. She would say some variation of this. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the same lesson she would say every single time. And initially I would think, simple grandmother, right? Something like this I would think. But then when I thought about it, I actually realized, no, this is actually the fruit of 70 years of sadhana. To actually come to understand this basic point, right? It's not basic at all. It is so deep and profound, the ramifications, that Krishna is above everything. Krishna is the greatest thing. We think of realizations as knowledge, right? As information, as facts, right? Oh, this person, what sweet realizations, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says this, Jiva Goswami says this, right? We think of this, wow, such nice realizations, connecting this shloka with that shloka. And these are sometimes realizations. But really, realization is to be able to read the Bhagavad Gita and have that conviction that nothing is greater than Krishna. Actually, I saw that I didn't see that, but my mother told me then eventually when she passed away, what had happened was the temple president of the Guwahati temple, he brought a painting of Krishna, right? And in her final moments, what she did was, as her body was shutting down, her organs were shutting down, she just lifted her hands up like this, and she did dandavats like this. She did her obeisances, and then she put her hands down, and then she passed away. And I thought, oh, that is some realization, right? That is some realization. We can talk about this thing and that thing. But if we have the conviction that the final act we wish to do is to acknowledge that Krishna is higher than everything, this is realization. So points like this, Krishna is avyakta, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't have a form. It means he has a form. We think, I've heard it so many times. But have we realized it? Have we internalized that the Supreme Personality of Godhead has form? Prabhupada said this. I heard this from Ramai Swami Maharaj. Prabhupada said, I've given deity worship. Because if you do not worship the deity, you will all become Mayavadis. You'll all become impersonalists, right? Again, because we say, oh yeah, I know this point, Krishna has form. Tell me about the Rasa Leela. But no, have we realized that Krishna has form? Have we realized that Krishna has transcendental form? Again, we want to reduce Krishna consciousness to information. But it is not information. We wish to reduce Srimad Bhagavatam to information. But it is not information. Just the same as Krishna. He is what? He is avyakta, right? He is unmanifested, right? This means he is not having material qualities. It means he is not having material form. In the same way, what is Srimad Bhagavatam? We see in this world, even though Krishna does not have material form, he so mercifully appears in this world in a way that we can perceive still, right? In which forms? In the form of the holy name, right? In the form of the Murti, correct? And in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam. These are all Krishna himself, right? And so this unmanifested form is actually made manifest in Srimad Bhagavatam, in the Murti, and of course in Harinam. And yet, what happens? We are so used to our material conditioning that we take them all as material. We look at the Murti and we think, oh, Radha Gopinath is very beautiful. How nice is the marble they are made of? We might not think that directly, but that is our understanding in our head. We treat the avyakta Supreme Lord as if he is vyakta, as if he is manifest, right? We hear the holy name, and we hear some nice music, some nice meditation, right? I remember once when Ed Prabhu and I were visiting Melbourne, Ed Prabhu gave me a very nice compliment. He told me, he said, Prabhu, I really like your kirtans because it reminds me not to focus on the music, but to focus on the holy name. I thought, thanks, Ed. Thank you, Prabhu. Dandavat Pranam. But actually, it was a nice compliment, but it was maybe a little bit backhanded. But I I think Prabhu realized afterwards what he was saying, but so we see this, right? We can get caught up in all these material things. But we know, at least in theory, that when I see Gopinath, I should know that I'm seeing the Supreme Lord. When I hear the holy name in Kirtan, I shouldn't be focusing on the music. I shouldn't be focusing on anything else but that the Supreme Lord is here. But we can miss this with Srimad Bhagavatam. We can study Bhagavatam, and what do we always think? I can't remember anything, right? That's what we all think. I'm reading Bhagavatam, I can't remember anything, right? Because what is Bhagavatam to us? Some information that we're putting into our head. Well, then we're making this literary incarnation of Krishna. We are turning him into what? Information? It might very well be that we read and we forget everything we read. But if our day-to-day life is transformed, if our devotional service is transformed, if we have tasted something while reading, then we have encountered Bhagavatam. And if we remember every single syllable of Srimad Bhagavatam and no transformation is there, then what has happened? It's as good as saying Radha Gopinath is made of marble. It's as good as saying Kirtan is just music. Right? So this is what Srimad Bhagavatam is. It is Krishna himself. It is not a bunch of information. The Bhagavatam is not, I saw this one poster once, and it was a nice poster. I don't have any criticism of it, but it said Srimad Bhagavatam, spiritual encyclopedia, right? And I thought, this is true. It is a spiritual encyclopedia, but we have to emphasize that it is a spiritual encyclopedia. It is not just some encyclopedia of information. I will learn all this great history or anything. You can read much bigger history books, but you will not read much better manifestations of Krishna in literary form. So we have to be careful in this way when we approach Srimad Bhagavatam. Right? Bhagavatam is a book to transform us, but even more so, it is a book to be relished. I often make this point, but sometimes I think whenever I see my spiritual master reading Srimad Bhagavatam, my Guru Maharaj is famous for reading Srimad Bhagavatam, right? For relishing it. And I'll think that when I read Srimad Bhagavatam, I learn. But when my spiritual master reads Srimad Bhagavatam, he cries, right? There's a distinction there. Not crying tears like the Sahajiyas do, right? Look at this big show I'm making. But crying tears because in this book is something to taste, right? In this book, well, this book is Krishna, right? We don't go before Radha Gopinath. What does the word Maya mean? There's many definitions, but one of the definition of Maya means to measure, right? To take this world and to quantify it, and to substantiate it. And the worst thing we can do is when we take the Supreme Personality of Godhead and we treat him as Maya, measure him out. Imagine if we go up to Gopinath, take a ruler and measure and say, Gopinath's so wonderful because, this many centimeters, that many centimeters, right? This is the exact color of the dhoti, right? This is the RGB, right? What will happen, right? Nothing. But when we stand before Gopinath and we think Gopinath looks so beautiful, so sweet, right? Then we've engaged with Gopinath. And we know this, and yet somehow we forget it with Srimad Bhagavatam. Suddenly it becomes, I need to memorize every fact. I need to make flashcards of everything. And don't get me wrong, I do all of that, right? But we should do that as part of our worship. I once heard from Shivaram Swami Maharaj. Maharaj, he was saying, somebody asked him, can we take notes in our Bhagavatam, right? Can we write notes in the pages? And he said, yes, but only if the notes look beautiful. Huh? He said, when we take the notes, we should think in the same way that when we sometimes are doing Murti Seva, we will paint gopi dots on the Murti. In the same way, we should think when I highlight in Bhagavatam, it is like painting gopi dots on the Murti, right? When we are taking notes inside, it is like dressing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But do we think this way? No. Bhagavatam study, Shastric study, this is our dry time, where we sit down and we become pandits. But no. When we sit down with Bhagavatam, we're having darshan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead made manifest. We should feel that same emotion. We all become a bunch of raging sentimentalists whenever Radha Gopinath comes up. And that's fine, But we do, Radha Gopinath, right? And don't get me wrong, that's good. We should cultivate that feeling. But we become a bunch of raging sentimentalists, and then the moment we open up Bhagavatam, we become so boring. But we should also have some sentiment for Srimad Bhagavatam. That same excitement, you know. Oh, I was thinking about this actually. That same excitement whenever the altar opens, right? And the curtains open up and everyone goes, wow, Radha Gopinath, and everyone's smiling and happy. And then we open Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, oh yeah, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, right? This is what happens. But when we open Srimad Bhagavatam, we should have that same excitement as when the curtains open, right? We should have that same excitement. And when Bhagavatam picks up in intensity, we all know it's our favorite part of the kirtan, you know, at the beginning, Hare Krishna, Hare, you know, whatever, right? But then when it starts going, Hare Krishna, and we're all jumping around, and we're excited and we're happy, right? We don't feel that, but when Bhagavatam, isn't the narrative of Bhagavatam so amazing, right? These stories, these pastimes, right? But we don't get excited. We're not jumping in our rooms and throwing each other and doing backflips and everything, right? But we should be. This Bhagavatam is Krishna himself and he is to be tasted. Ocean of rasa. And this ocean of rasa is here in Srimad Bhagavatam. So sorry, I'm making this one point very long. It's not even what I wanted to focus on. But we have to realize this with Srimad Bhagavatam. Sometimes when I read Srimad Bhagavatam, I think our great acharyas, they would cry. There's some manuscripts, right, of the Shastras that are stained with the tears of our acharyas. Because as they would write their commentaries, they would weep and weep and weep over this text. And as I was saying, I've seen my own Guru Maharaj do this. And I know many other sadhus in our ISKCON society, right? They do this as well. They cry as they read the Srimad Bhagavatam. And so I think sometimes when I'm reading, I think if I catch myself going into this mindset, right? If I catch myself going into this mindset of looking for facts, I think actually so many sadhus in history have cried over this book. Let me try to find these tears in this book, right? Not let me try to find information. Let me find the mood of Srila Prabhupada, who is spending every single moment to give this Srimad Bhagavatam to us. Let me find and search for the tears of the sadhus. Where are they here? Then I will find something about Srimad Bhagavatam. But until then, Bhagavatam, boring, not spiritual encyclopedia. I have to do my 1 hour of reading today. I can't remember anything. No. When we have relished the Bhagavatam, if we walk away from Srimad Bhagavatam, sometimes people, sometimes they'll ask me, they'll say, you know, how can I improve my study of Bhagavatam? They'll ask sort of questions like that. And I'll say, if you walk away from your 1 hour study with Bhagavatam, right? And you walk away inspired to chant your rounds. If you walk away thinking Srimad Bhagavatam is the most beautiful book, then your study has been successful, right? If you've picked up some appreciation of service to the Vaishnavas, of service to Krishna, then your study has been successful. This is not mundane literature. We should not reduce Bhagavatam to a collection of information. So in this way, the Supreme Lord, he is avyakta, right? He is transcendental. And what do we hear in the purport? Srila Prabhupada, he so nicely explains that this Lord, even though he is avyakta, he is made what? He is made visible to those with spiritual senses, right? And what are those senses? Those are the senses those are the eyes rather, which are developed, right, by pure devotional service, right? It is not, again, through knowledge that one is able to see the Supreme Lord, but through service. And once one does develop that, the world completely transforms. I remember when we were in Guwahati, again, I'm mentioning Ed Prabhu a lot today. Ed Prabhu was there as well, and we were visiting the ISKCON Guwahati temple, right? It was the group of us. And ISKCON Guwahati is interesting. It was the first big project that Srila Jayapataka Swami Maharaj started after Srila Prabhupada entered into the Nitya Leela. So it's a very sweet, big temple. It's on a hill, very majestic deities. They look almost identical to Radha Madhav, right? So we were there at the temple and we were having darshan, right? But when we went to arrive, the temple president, I told him there's a few of us were coming to visit, right? And so what happened is this temple president, right, Sri Jiva Prabhu, you can tell if somebody's a very senior disciple of Jayapataka Swami Maharaj if they have a short name. Because Jayapataka Swami Maharaj, in the beginning, he gave short names, right? Like we know our dear Ganga Prabhu, right? very senior disciple, short name. Now, somebody once said Maharaj gives pranam mantras as names, right? So Sri Jiva Prabhu, short name, right? Very senior disciple of Maharaj. He was actually the one who led the development of this project. So we can imagine a very senior Vaishnav, right? Leading such an old project. And ever since that construction project had been complete, he's in charge of that temple. Everyone there, they all say, he is our main spiritual master, right? If you meet any of the devotees there, they'll say, Sri Jiva Prabhu, he is our spiritual master, right? And for the whole northeast area, right, Sri Jiva Prabhu, he is maintaining it. So he's a very busy devotee. In fact, once, I remember we were talking to him, and he would just mention that sometimes Jai Pataka Maharaj will just ring him, right? And just say, Sri Jiva Prabhu, do this, 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 and this, right? So you're a pretty busy person if Jai Pataka Maharaj has you on speed dial, right? So Sri Jiva Prabhu, he's running this whole area. He's such a senior devotee. And yet, what happened? When we went to the temple, I remember, he stood out in the front, and he waved the car down, and he welcomed us in. And I realized he is so busy. He has so much things to do and not enough time to do them. And yet he waited out in the front for us in order to greet us, right? And then he came in just to take us up the stairs, because it's on the hill, right? Just to take us up the stairs and to say, welcome to our temple. He waited out. He spent 20 minutes waiting outside, waiting for when the car will arrive, just in case we came early, right? One of his servants later told me. So then I was feeling so bad, right? Prabhu was so busy, and he put that time in just to give us some proper hospitality. So then later on, he said, okay, come upstairs and have prasad. We were going to go to the prasad hall, but he said, come upstairs. So then we said, okay. So we went upstairs. And he called all these brahmacharis in, right? And so we thought, okay, the brahmacharis will serve us. That's already embarrassing enough. But what to do, You should accept hospitality when the Vaishnavas give it. So we all sat down, and they brought out all of these beautiful items, right? And as they brought out all of these items, the brahmacharis, they lay out all of the tiffins. And then Sri Jiva Prabhu himself came, and he served each one of us individually, right? I was the only initiated one there, and I'm initiated, only a few years ago, right? This is Bhakta so-and-so, Bhakta so-and-so, Bhakta so-and-so. In fact, one person there wasn't even a devotee. And yet Sri Jiva Prabhu was there with this tiffin, and he's just filling all of our plates up, and we're there completely embarrassed. Oh, no, Prabhu, please, we can serve ourselves. And he's like, no. He forces us, right? And then after he fills all of our plates up, we all eat, and he asks each and every one of us, right? He asks each and every one of us, what was your favorite item? And then when we say what our favorite item is, he quickly runs to the tiffin and he refills that item on our plate, right? So in this way, he was serving and serving. So I remember feeling so embarrassed, right? Thinking, what a senior Vaishnav, right? What is he doing? I feel so bad. But then I was also thinking another thing. The prasad was really, really nice, right? And I remember honoring the prasad, and I remember thinking, this is amazing what I'm tasting. But when I saw how happy Prabhu was serving people who are his junior in every respect, in age, in spiritual advancement, in initiation, in position, in every single respect, he is here and we are there. But I remember seeing his face, and I was thinking, what I'm tasting here is nice, but I want to know what he's tasting. He's tasting something much nicer in this prasad. He is so ecstatic to put himself in such a humble position, right? I remember later on I was giving class there, I glorify Sri Jiva Prabhu told. I can do it for hours. He's such an amazing Vaishnav. But I remember I was giving class later on, like some Sunday feast class, right? And the microphone stand wasn't working, right? And because it wasn't working properly, Sri Jiva Prabhu was there himself. And he came over, he picked the microphone up, and he just held it up to my mouth, right? He held it there. He did the job of a microphone stand. I felt so embarrassed. I said, Prabhu, let me hold it. And he said, no, it's easier for the translator. And like that, he was moving it back and forth. I thought, what a what a senior Vaishnav is doing this. That whole trip, I felt so embarrassed. Sometimes I'd be scared to go to the temple. I think, what will Prabhu do next? But then I saw how ecstatic he was doing this. And I realized, this is the vision of the Vaishnav. This is the vision of devotional service. And what does that vision do? What does that vision do? I remember we then went to Mayapur, and we had darshan of Srila Jai Pataka Swami Maharaj. And of course that was ecstatic, right? And after the darshan though, we were talking to Maharaj's personal servants. And Mahārāja Pṛthu was there. I think some of you will know Mahārāja Pṛthu, right? Yeah. So, from Malaysia only, yes. Yeah, Prabhu, you'll be knowing him well. Sorry? Same Same hometown, really. Jai. So I remember Mahārāja Pṛthu was there, and he was because we were all there from Australia visiting. So he was telling us his memories of visiting Australia, right? He was telling us his memories and how he used to come with Jayapataka Swami Maharaj. And Maharaj would love the Rath Yatra, right? The Rath Yatra up north, right? And he would tell us, because the Rath Yatra would go through the city, sometimes when they go through the city area, there would be these multi-story buildings. And on the highest stories, there would be bars, right, and clubs. And people would be out there, you know. We see this even now if you go on Harinam Sankirtan, especially on New Year's, right? You go on New Year's, all the drunk people will come and dance with you, and it's ecstatic, actually, right? No, I won't talk about that as a tangent. So they're talking about all the drunk people there, right? And Jayapataka Maharaj would love it, this Rath Yatra in particular. And so he was telling us a story, and he would tell us that when they would go through these busy areas, sometimes these people in the clubs, in the bars, they would finish their drinks, right? They would drink their beer or vodka or whatever in their cans, right? And they would crush up the can, and they would throw it onto the Rath, right? And we all heard that, and I remember we all got into our Vira Ras. We all thought, how dare they, you know, they're bogus demons, right? We got so angry, right? I saw everyone, we all were so uncomfortable hearing this. And then Mahārāja Pṛthu, he said something so sweet. He said, that is all that they had to offer, so they offered it. Right? These beer cans were all that they had to offer, so they offered that to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And I thought, this is the vision of the Vaishnav. This is what that vision of devotional service produces, right? We want to reduce it to, once I get the vision of devotional service, I will see Krishna everywhere. Wow, I will have ecstatic symptoms, right? We want to think in this way. But this is the vision of the Vaishnav. Everywhere seeing devotional service. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, what would he do? He would run around and he would see a regular hill and he would fall down in ecstasy and think, I have seen Govardhan. Right? This is the vision of the Vaishnav. Right? This is why to receive the merciful glance of the Vaishnav is such a great thing. To have the Vaishnav even look at us is such a great thing, because the Vaishnav will see in us what we cannot see in ourselves. Right? Mahārāja Pṛthu, he's seeing beer cans being thrown onto the Rath, and he is seeing people offering what little they can offer. Mahaprabhu, he is seeing these hills, and he is seeing Govardhan. And the Vaishnavas see us, a bunch of bogus, sense-gratifying rascals, and they see devotees. Right? This is the merciful glance of the Vaishnav. This is what pure devotional service generates. A vision that can see this. And then maybe we can become Vaishnavas when we are seen by such personalities. Maybe it is possible. So in this way, this is the vision of the Vaishnava. In fact, it's described that Krishna's chariot driver. Krishna's chariot driver, sometimes when Krishna gets into the chariot, right, what will he do? He'll begin to worship him with a chamara, right? And as he begins to worship him with the chamara, what happens? What happens if Krishna is there right in front of you and you're worshipping him? He begins to manifest all of these ecstatic symptoms. And manifesting all of these ecstatic symptoms, right, what do we think? We think, oh, wow, you know, ashtasatvika bhavs. My hairs are standing on end, right? I can't wait. That's true, right? We read especially Chaitanya Charitamrita and we think, I can't wait until I experience all these ecstasies. But what does he do? He curses them. He curses them and he begins to pray to Krishna, please let these symptoms end, because my hand is not steady anymore in fanning you, right? I'm not able to stand with the right posture in order to fan you properly. These ecstatic symptoms are getting in the way of my service. So please let them end. This is the vision of seva. This is the vision of service. In Prema Bhakti Chandrika, Narottam Das Thakur, he says, if I'm in Vrindavan or if I'm in a prison, it does not matter. As long as I'm able to taste seva namrita. As long as I'm able to taste the amrita of seva. So this devotional service, this is the means by which we are able to see Krishna. This is the means by which we are able to witness Krishna. And once we witness Krishna, our whole worldview changes, right? It is not something so simple as now I can see, right? His beautiful dhoti, right? and a soft form, as beautiful as those things are, it means that the whole way I see the world changes, because I now see the whole world in connection to Krishna and in connection to service to Krishna. I say this quote, I think, almost every single Bhagavatam class. Please don't mind. But Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he was once asked, have you seen Krishna? And he said, I'm not looking for Krishna. I'm looking for service to Krishna. Right? And that is everywhere. Once I run out of service for Krishna, then I will look for Krishna. This is the vision in which we will be able to see Krishna everywhere. Right? So, in this way, we see we see that Krishna, he is not experienced, not experienced through the senses, right? But then how can we experience Krishna, right? It is only through the mercy of those people. We can think of Hanuman. Hanuman, it's described that, Hare Krishna, it's described that Hanuman, when he began to be engaged in the service of Lord Ramchandra, what would happen is that he would be serving him constantly, right? 24/7. 24/7 observance of seva. And what would happen is Sita would be there and she would sort of think, Hanuman, you're not Ram's wife. Leave some seva for the rest of us. We know there's some people, actually recently Shubhag Swami Maharaj, he was visiting in Sydney. And so by the mercy of the Vaishnavas, I was given some services, right? And it was so wonderful to see. No matter what service was given, even if there was a name given, there'd be a fight. 6 or 7 devotees fighting. No, it's all right. I'll do it. So many times, actually, it became like almost like a battle, right? We're all battling each other for this service, that service. Each person was trying to find a way to cut the service out to the other. So, in this way, this is how the Vaishnavas are. This is nice, right? Prabhupada would sometimes say, Prabhupada, we know, would fight with his God brothers, right? But he would tell his disciples, he would say, these fights are transcendental, right? Because we are fighting to please our spiritual master. So in this way, these fights happen. So in this way, Sita, she would start complaining to Lord Ram. She would say, hey, Hanuman, I get that you guys are friends, right? But please, I want to do some service. I'm your wife, Please let me connect to you in this way. So in this way, she would complain. And then so Ram, he said, okay, I will tell Hanuman, right? So then he said, okay, Hanuman, maybe you take a little bit of a vacation, right? Take a service vacation, relax yourself, calm down a little bit. So Hanuman said, okay, I will. So what he started to do was just half of the services. But then half would become more and more and more. And eventually, the same issue arose. So then Sita, she said, please, just let Hanuman full holiday, no services. So Ramchandra, he said, you just take a break. All of these things, Sita, she can do them for the next foreseeable future. So Hanuman, he said, okay, you are my lord. So what he did then is he got this one instrument. It's an instrument they play with kings whenever kings would arrive. It's an auspicious instrument. It's not a conch shell, but it has a similar effect of invoking auspiciousness, right? So what he would do is any time that Ramchandra would yawn, in Vedic culture, yawning is inauspicious, right? So any time that Ramchandra would yawn, like this, Hanuman, he would play this instrument. Because he think, this is my service, right? This is my service. So what would happen is, Hanuman would be right next to Ram. And anytime Ramchandra would open his mouth, Hanuman would go, and he would think, any moment, I can't miss this seva. So he'd be there. So what would happen is, Ramchandra would be there, lying. And what is the time you're yawning the most, right? Before you're about to go to sleep. So what would happen is Ramchandra would be there, Sita would be there, and Hanuman would be in the corner of the room with the trumpet. And Ramchandra would be getting ready to go to sleep. So then Sita, she said, come on. Come on, what is going on here? So Sita, she told Ramchandra again, right? She said, come on. Please, I just want just a tiny bit of association. So then Ramchandra, he said, Hanuman, you're a brahmachari. It's not really appropriate for you to be in a grihasta's bedroom in the middle of night. Ghaneshan Prabhu would cut all your heads off, right? Right, it's not really appropriate. So you leave. So then Hanuman said, of course, I should follow my brahmachari dharma. So what he did is he stayed outside of the front door of the room and he just played the horn constantly just to make sure he wouldn't miss it. So it'd just be It would just be constantly like this. And then what happened was, Sita, she said, okay, this is enough. Ramchandra, I don't know what you need to do, just fix this, okay? So then Ram, he went and he said, okay, maybe you give the horn to somebody else. So then they went and they took it away. And then in this way, Hanuman, now he's left with no seva. And then Ramchandra, he went to speak. And he couldn't speak any words anymore. Sita would think, what has happened? Right? And then she realized, by divorcing Bhagavan from his devotee, by creating that divorce, now Ram, he is no longer able to speak. His rasa, his composition, it is no longer complete. And then she said, okay, you continue to serve Hanuman. And then Ram was able to speak again. In this way, we see this is the position of service. Sometimes we say, Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate. We say this, but Gaur Govinda Maharaj, sometimes when he would hear that, he would say, if you were to go up to Krishna, and Krishna were to be away from his devotees, and you were to say, maybe we'll say, if Krishna appeared in front of us tomorrow. Actually, if Krishna appeared in front of us tomorrow directly, we would just get scared. But if we were at that level where Krishna appeared right in front of us, but there was no devotees around him, and we were to say, Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu, what would Krishna say? Gaur Govinda Maharaj, he said, Krishna would say, oh, Karuna Sindhu, it is not with me, but it is with them. It is with the Vaishnavas. Krishna, he is Karuna Sindhu because he is there with the devotees. That is why, what do we call Srila Prabhupada, right? We say His Divine Grace in English, but in India, what do they say? What do they say in the books they write? Yeah, Paramahansa is there. Krishna Kripa Murti, right? Krishna Kripa Murti. Because Krishna, he's doing what? He's having so much fun in the spiritual world. He's dancing and, he's dancing and he's playing his flute and, what does he have to do with the sufferings of this world, right? Of course, he's got some compassion, but, he's got compassion for the fact that Mother Jashoda really wants to see him later today. So he gives the compassion by returning back home, right? And sometimes his friends want to win when they're wrestling with him, so he gives that compassion, right? But where is that Karuna Sindhu? Right? Krishna, he's so busy playing. But the Vaishnavas, they're in this world, and what are they doing? They've suffered like we've suffered, right? The Vaishnavas, they've gone through struggles, right? They've had difficult lives. And so with all of that difficulty, with all of that suffering, they tell Krishna, hey Krishna, I know it's all fun and games up there, but it's actually a lot of suffering here. Can you please pour out your mercy here? And then Krishna pours out his mercy. Jiva Goswami makes this point. It's not my mental speculation. This is a Shastric point, right? That is why Karuna Sindhu. Karuna Sindhu means Krishna who is immersed with the Vaishnavas. The Karuna Sindhu is Krishna, yes, but Krishna with the devotees. So this is what the vision of Seva does, right? This is the vision of the Vaishnavas. So we see that the Vaishnavas therefore are very essential, right? The Vaishnavas are most essential in our spiritual lives. We cannot hope to complete our spiritual lives without Vaishnav Sangha. Again, it is the Vaishnavas. Just recently, I think a few weeks ago, in your Saturday class, there was one Mataji asked a question about Guru, right? Why do we need a Guru, right? Why do I need a Guru? Maybe I can just read some books and I can teach myself, right? Guru is there to teach us. But I made the point that yes, we can learn information from books, right? To come back to the beginning of the class. We can learn information from books. But Guru is there. Guru is there to look at us. Guru is there to look at us, and Guru is there to believe in us, right? Guru is there to tell us, you are this person, right? What does the Guru do when they give you their mercy? They say, you are so-and-so Das. You are so-and-so Devi Dasi, right? They give you a name, and they tell you, this is who you are. You think you are this person, but actually you are a servant of Krishna, right? So in this way, it is only when we are connected to the Vaishnavas, it is only when we are connected to the Guru that we can be connected to Krishna. And therefore, what do we hear? Krishna Bhakti Janma Mool. Does anyone know the shlok? Krishna Bhakti Janma Mool Hoi Sadhu Sanga. Right? Krishna Bhakti Janma, the birth of Krishna. Mool, its root is what? Sadhu Sanga. Krishna Prema Janme Teho. After then, even after we attain Krishna Prem, right? So the birth of bhakti is Sadhu Sangha, right? We get bhakti only through Sadhu Sangha. But then what? Krishna Prema Janme Teho. After we even attain Krishna Prem, the highest level of bhakti, Punamukha Anga, it still remains the primary anga of our spiritual life, right? So this Sadhu Sangha is the means through which not only those who have this spiritual vision of devotional service can see us, but also is the means through which we will eventually be able to attain that vision. And so therefore, Narottam Das Thakur, he writes in Prema Bhakti Chandrika, Krishna Bhakti Shango Kori, Krishna Bhakta Ongo Hiri. He says, Krishna Bhakta Shango Kori, take the association of the Vaishnavas. But then he also says, Krishna Bhakta Ongo Hiri. Right? He says, and experience what? See the angas, the limbs, the body of the Krishna Bhaktas. Right? This is interesting as well, right? Because we will often think this. We might think, okay, maybe I need a guru for this, but once I have a guru, I can just listen to some tapes, right? I can just read some books. But this is not the point that Narottam Das Thakur is making. He's not saying, Krishna Bhakta Vani Heri, right? He's saying Krishna Bhakta Ongo Heri, the angas of the Vaishnavas, the angas of the devotees, their very limbs should be seen. What does this mean? It means that Prabhupada is Krishna Kripa Murti because he has given us ISKCON. Now that seems like a bit of a tangent, right? But what this means is that this mercy of the Vaishnavas, right, it is to be experienced not just through Guru, but through all of the Krishna Bhaktas, and through, again, through seeing them. Right? Sometimes people will say, why do I need to attend Bhagavatam class, right? There's some new Bhaktas giving Bhagavatam class. What will they know, right? I'm initiated for so many years, right? Why do I need, I'm better off I go and I listen to Prabhupada's lectures, right? Because what Prabhupada will say will be good, but who knows? These people are there, they're speaking whatever nonsense, right? But Prabhupada, he very much insisted, right, that Bhagavatam class is given even by the newest of devotees, right? Prabhupada himself would attend his disciples' classes, right? I'm sure we all saw that video like 10 years ago. Everyone was sharing it of Radhe Shyam Prabhu giving Bhagavatam class, and Radhanath Maharaj was in the crowd, right? So, this Srimad Bhagavatam class, this ISKCON society, it is there for which purpose? It is there for this purpose, to witness the angas, the limbs of the Vaishnavas, right? Krishna Kripa Murti. The Vaishnavas, they are the Karuna Sindhu. They are this ocean of mercy that we are meant to experience, right? And we do not experience that only through the Vani. We do not experience that only through the Guru. We experience that by associating with one another. Does this make sense? Why has Prabhupada built all these temples? Why has Prabhupada manifested this ISKCON society, right? Is it to build the pride of Sanatana Dharma? Is it there to build some pride in the culture? No. Is it here because we need these temples in order to worship Krishna? No. Prabhupada says, these temples are not required. The devotee is happy simply with Bhagavatam. Simply with Bhagavatam and their own murtis, they can be living in a hut. The devotees are satisfied. Pujapad Gaur Govinda Swami Maharaj, he would live in a simple mud hut, and he would there engage in all of his services. Every night when he would sleep, snakes would go over his body, right? Devotees would stay with him and they would see snakes would be going in his room. And simply like that every day, he would just be renounced chanting and he would be relishing that. And yet he built ISKCON Bhuvaneshwar temple. Why? Right? We don't need a temple to worship Krishna. So why is Prabhupada building these temples? Why are we rebuilding this temple? Everyone who's watching, please donate a lot. Empty your wallets, please. It's easy for me to say that I'm a broke uni student. I don't but please donate. Why do we have these temples? Why do we have this ISKCON society? Krishna Bhakta Angoheri. It is to facilitate the association of the Vaishnavas. We need a big temple to fit all of us into. That is why we are building temples. We are not the International Society for Construction Consciousness. We are not the International Society for Management Consciousness. And yet, construction of temples is important. Management is important. Why? Because it facilitates us having the association of the bodies of the Vaishnavas. Remember in lockdown, Zoom classes, they're nice, but they're not enough. Right? They're not enough. We need to come and have the physical association of the Vaishnav. Right? That is what we need. Krishna Bhakta Anga Hiri. And this is why we are building temples. We should build temples, right? It's not a bad thing. But we should think why we are building them. We are building them to facilitate the meeting of Vaishnavas. And Prabhupada has said this repeatedly in his books, in his letters. He says, I have created this ISKCON institution so that the Vaishnavas can come together and speak about Krishna and chant about Krishna and sing about Krishna. Amol Leela Prabhu once, I was mentioning to one of his students, I was saying, I was saying something, I wasn't criticizing, I was saying that management meetings are boring, but then it's fun when I don't do many, but like just for small, like even for small outreach groups, little and big projects, right? I was saying even those I find so boring. I can't imagine how boring the big management meetings are. That's what I was telling him. And then he laughed and he said, management, what's that? He said, I haven't heard of it. And I was like, oh, like when you're deciding who's bringing the prasad, where we're getting funding for this and that. And he said, oh, I thought that's just Vaishnav care. I thought that's just caring for the devotees. Again, the vision of the Vaishnav. Why are we organizing all of these things? Why are we doing anything? Why are we organizing big festivals, right? So that the devotees can come together. And the devotees can again, Krishna Bhakta Anga Hiri. They can all have darshan of each other. They can all enjoy each other's association. So, in this way, this is the whole point of our Krishna consciousness movement. This is the whole point of Srila Prabhupada's movement, that we simply come together and we enjoy each other's company. It's described in the 11th canto of Bhagavatam that there are different ways to see Krishna, and there are different ways to serve Krishna, right? By doing charity to the brahmanas, we can observe Krishna's presence in them, right? Observing Krishna's presence in the yajna by doing homa, right? All of these different things. By feeding the cows, we observe Krishna's presence in the cows. But it says something interesting. How can we observe Krishna's presence in the Vaishnavas? Does anyone know? Does anyone remember this? It's the 11th canto of Bhagavatam. See, that's what you would think, right? Hearing the Vani of the Vaishnavas. Srimad Bhagavatam says by becoming their friend. Isn't that sweet? In 11th canto it says this. It says that we can observe Krishna's presence in the heart of the Vaishnav by befriending them with kritya, with respect. Right? Respectfully befriending the Vaishnav. This is the means by which we can acknowledge Krishna's presence in the Vaishnavas. This is the purpose of our ISKCON institution. That we can see this beautiful form of Krishna. And it is so beautiful, right? I wouldn't know, but I have darshan of people who do. And they can very much say that that form of Krishna is beautiful, right? But this is the point of our Krishna conscious society, right? This is the point of ISKCON. There was one disciple of Narottam Das Thakur. He was a very terrible man. Very, very terrible man. Committed many crimes, many murders. He makes, almost Jaga and Madhai level bad. Anyways, it's a long story. I won't get into it because I'm running out of time. But his life story is described, and eventually he was initiated by Narottam Das Thakur, right? But what happened was, a king who had heard of this man's many crimes, he saw him down the street, and he didn't know that this person had become a Vaishnav. So he said, finally, we've got him. And he locked him up, and he put him into prison, right? And putting him into prison, he locked him, put him in the deepest part of the prison cells, right? Because he was so worried. This person is such a fiend, such a murderer, such a terrible person. What happens if he escapes? He has this fear. And so he locks him away. But then the father of this Vaishnav, he becomes very worried. What will happen? My son is in prison, right? So he goes to a tantric, right? He goes to this tantric and he tells the tantric, you know all this black magic, you know all of these things. Can you help my son escape? The tantric says, of course, I will help. So he does some, tantra mantra, right? He does this and he goes and he creates a tunnel underneath the bottom of the prison cell, right? And he goes and he emerges right into the middle of the prison. And when he emerges in the middle of the prison, suddenly he sees this devotee, and he sees him chanting his rounds. And this tantric, he tells him, he says, oh, I've come to deliver you from this prison cell, right? And the devotee looks at him a little bit confused, and he says, oh, okay, who sent you? And he said, your father sent you. And he said, okay, I should follow my father's wishes, right? And he said, in order to escape, you just have to chant this one mantra. And he said, oh, what is this mantra? And he said, it's a Kali mantra. And then at this point, he says, my Guru Maharaj has given me enough mantras. Just let me stay in the prison cell and chant those. And then he said, hey, come on, don't you want to escape? And he said, why would I want to escape? When I'm outside, people are harassing me, do this, do that, hey, did you meet this person? Can you pay those bills? Did you submit your assignments, right? People are harassing me with all sorts of stuff. In this prison cell, I get to wake up in the morning, I get to chant my rounds, I get to think of my Guru Maharaj. He said, don't worry about it. He said, you just go back. And he said, come on, just chant this one mantra. You can do all of those things outside. And he said, my Guru Maharaj has given me enough mantras. I'm happy with my sadhana here. And he sent the tantric back. This is described in Prema Bhakti Vilas, some one of those books the story is described. So, in this way, we can see the Vaishnavas, they are satisfied with nothing else than bhakti. But there is one thing that he eventually says. One thing that he eventually says that makes him think he wants to escape. And he does eventually leave. It's a long story how he leaves. I don't have time to say it. He thinks, even though I'm here, I'm able to chant. I'm able to think of Krishna. But I'm not able to have darshan of my spiritual master's lotus feet. So he thinks, I'm able to have such a peaceful time, do all the things I've always wanted to do, but I'm not able to see my spiritual master's lotus feet. And at that point, the desire to escape arose in his heart. And with that desire, then, eventually Krishna reciprocated and he escaped. Anyways, we can keep on talking and talking and talking, but I've gone over time. But to conclude, Krishna, he is avyakta, he is transcendental. We cannot perceive that, right? We must try, at the very least though, not to treat him as vyakta, right? This is our trap, right? We are not able to see the avyakta form of Krishna, but at the very least we should not reduce him to a vyakta form. But eventually, the association of the Vaishnavas, who are also avyakta, right? Who are also avyakta, by their association, eventually we will be able to see Krishna, because they are the Karuna Sindhu, right? When we say, hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu, we shouldn't think just of Krishna on his own. We should think Krishna of the spiritual master there as well. And in that way, we'll be able to understand all these things. Anyways, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Yeah, sorry. I didn't prepare, so I was jumping around here and there, whatever was coming to my head. I'm sorry. Prabhu, you're going to get me kicked out of ISKCON is a controversial question. I mean, I'll give my non-controversial answer. Prabhupada very much wanted Varnashram to be established, and we can see pretty clearly Prabhupada wanted the farms to be the communities, and then devotees, they cultivate their bhakti on the farms, and then they come to the cities, and the cities are like outposts. That was Prabhupada's ideal, right? Okay, I'll give a slightly long answer. I hope you don't mind, just for a few minutes. But one issue that we make is we think Varnashram can only happen on farms. But Dwarka existed. Dwarka is a city, and Dwarka was doing Varnashram. So we also have to remember that Prabhupada's manifestation of Varnashram doesn't mean that we all have to leave the city. It is true that Prabhupada wanted the farms to be the hubs of Krishna consciousness, but it doesn't mean that we can only do Varnashram in farms. Otherwise, Dwarka couldn't have existed, right? Ayodhya couldn't have existed. City, yeah, it's finished. So, so in this way, Varnashram doesn't require us to leave the city, right? But Prabhupada did want us to go. And I've heard many places, I'm not sure if it's recorded, but I've heard from so many disciples that Prabhupada did say this, 50% of my work is done, I want Varnashram to be complete. But we have to think what Varnashram is. When we see how Prabhupada discusses Varnashram, he doesn't discuss it as some societal project, right? Prabhupada makes it very clear that we will not actually be able to fully fulfill Varnashram in Kali Yuga. The whole point of Kali Yuga is everyone's a Shudra, everything's bogus, it's all, you know, it's all gone away, right? Prabhupada is very clear in his letters and instructions that Varnashram is useful because it gives us a better platform to practice Krishna consciousness. So, on the one hand, yes, 50% of the mission Prabhupada is saying was he wanted this Varnashram, but he wanted that Varnashram only to provide a better platform for people to practice Krishna consciousness. In one letter, he actually says, Varnashram is good because it'll be good for preaching. When society falls apart, people will see that these people have a stable way of living and they'll come to us. So Prabhupada didn't really see Varnashram, is my understanding. Prabhupada didn't see Varnashram as a separate good that needed to happen because we need to restart Vedic civilization or anything. I don't think that's exactly what Prabhupada was getting at. I think what Prabhupada was getting at is Varnashram is an effective thing. Society is getting worse and worse and worse. This will be an effective preaching method. And it'll be an effective way to practice our Krishna consciousness. So I think those two things are there. So that's my understanding of Prabhupada saying 50% of my work. He just saw it as not just saw it, but my understanding is Prabhupada saw it primarily as a way of preaching more. So it's not that it was a separate thing, not that Prabhupada wanted to preach and restart Varnashram. I think Prabhupada just wanted to preach, and he saw Varnashram as a good way of expressing that. In terms of leaving the city, yeah, Dwarka, Ayodhya, all of these places wouldn't exist if Varnashram required cities to be destroyed, right? Now, again, it's pretty hard to be Krishna conscious in the city. That's my understanding. That's why Prabhupada wanted the farms to be the centers. But, yeah. Okay. Hare Krishna. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna.